Hello, welcome everyone to the Confident Women Leader Show. My name is Dina Redinger. I am the CEO of ACE Coaching Company and Diagnostic Thinking. The Confident Women Leader Show is focusing on helping others to find their confidence and getting out of chaos and stepping into the things that they want and they deserve for their life and their career. I believe, and so does Madeleine, my guest today, that women are changing the world. And I wanted to welcome my esteemed guest. And it's an honor to have you on with me, Dr. Madeleine de Hauke.
Thank you so much, Dina. It's an absolute delight to be here. And I love the way you introduced that, moving from chaos to clarity and confidence, because that's how it really feels. It really does feel like it's chaos before and then confidence afterwards, doesn't it?
It really does. And I wanted to say good morning to everybody in the United States. I think it's afternoon for those in Europe and Germany, which is where you are. And then good evening, India, and all my Asia Pacific watchers. So welcome, everyone. I wanted to introduce Dr. Madeleine de Hauke. She's a medical doctor by training with 25 years of experience in the life science industry. Madeleine founded Business for Good out of a deep conviction that business can be a force for good. Her company helps value-based leaders unlock that potential hidden inside of themselves and their team so they can boost profits and expand their positive impact on the world. Clients include multinationals like State Street Bank, Johnson & Johnson, fast-growing startups, and NGOs like Doctors Without Borders. So I am so excited to have you on the show because we have a lot in common. So I'd love for you to share with everybody around the world what you'd like for them to know about you.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Dina. And thank you, everybody who's joining us. The thing I'd love to share is really that chaos to confidence. So now when you read out my bio, yes, I'm a medical doctor. I've had that experience and now I work with multinationals. But, I grew up painfully shy. So shy that I actually developed a phobia called erythrophobia. And for those of you who don't know what that is, we all blush. Everybody knows what it's like to blush. Well, erythrophobia is where that blushing becomes debilitating. Mm-hmm. So fear of blushing when I was a child would actually stop me from saying anything in any social situation. And that stayed with me until my 20s. So even at university, even at jobs, in a meeting, I would not speak up because I was so worried I would blush. My heart would beat, I would get all those fight, flight responses, and it would keep me quiet. And it wasn't until I actually went to medical school as a mature student that I discovered a cure. And so that's really what I want to share with people. My story is one way where I overcame a phobia, and now I teach and train and coach quiet leaders to step into their brilliance. And no matter what you grew up with, what you developed as an adult, you can overcome that. Mm-hmm. And there are tools to overcome that. And that's really what I wanted to share.
I love that. That's so beautiful. And it took me over 25, 35 years in my career before I figured out some of the same things for even myself and that neuroscience of that shift. And then how do you get there and how to create that? So I love that. Confidence is such an important skill, for that place where you felt like this phobia that you had and that you could kind of step over. Talk about that place where it was an aha moment where you could say, oh, I get it. I see it now, where you couldn't see it before. How did you do that?
Well, I think it actually came from an overwhelming sense of frustration. So as I said, I was into my 20s by this time, and I had developed a personality of being invisible. That became my coping mechanism. So I wouldn't speak up. I would try not to do anything that might bring attention to myself. So even though I was extremely good at sport at that time, for example, I was in the national team, the UK team, I didn't tell anybody. I don't think my family even knows, because I didn't want to bring attention to myself. Also, I'm extremely tall. I'm 6 foot tall, so it's pretty hard not to be noticed. I would slouch, my body language would be really one of a victim to try and make myself smaller and invisible. But as I grew older and I saw other people get ahead of me at work or achieve more than me, and it was like, well, I could have done that. I could have done that even better than that person did it, but it was my fault. It was my fault. I was holding myself back.
Yes.
And so it was that combination of frustration. And then, as I said, when I was at medical school, I did medical school as a mature student, I discovered the cure. And so I'm going to share that with you now because, this is not, I didn't have to take a pill. This is not anything that's really groundbreakingly new, but it is the solution. And it's basically how we treat all types of phobias. So I had erythrophobia, but I learned this cure from a patient who had agoraphobia. And so the treatment is 3 things. They all start with an E, and it's exposure, exposure, and exposure. So that is the cure. Now, it sounds simple, but you start very, very, very small.
Mm-hmm.
So you treat yourself as if you have a phobia. I actually did have a phobia. In my case, for example, it would be standing up straight and allowing myself, when I walked into a crowded room, allow myself to hold up straight and not sit down straight away, because that was one of my coping mechanisms. As soon as I got into a room, I'd look for a chair so I could sit down so I wouldn't be taller than everybody else. I forced myself to stay up just a little bit longer. Mm-hmm. If I was in a meeting, okay, I never said anything in meetings, but if I was in a work meeting, then my goal would be to stand up and get myself a cup of coffee, because then people would be noticing me because I'd be standing up. So it was a small thing first, little by little, then it would be maybe asking a question and so on. But I gave myself goals. Nobody knew what those goals were. And now everybody's heard about moving outside your comfort zone. So my goals were always just a millimeter outside my comfort zone, just a little bit. And when I did that goal, I congratulated myself and I was proud of myself. And that celebration of achieving our successes, no matter how small, because for me it was a huge thing, we must celebrate and congratulate ourselves and then set a new goal straight away. Don't be happy with that one, set a new one straight away. So it was that exposure, 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 which was super important. And the flip side of that is another 3 thing is preparation, preparation, preparation. You know what you're going to do before you do it.
Yes.
Prepare that in your mind so that you feel a bit safer.
Yes.
And know what might happen if something goes wrong. What are you going to do? So exposure, 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 and preparation, preparation, preparation. Sounds simple, but that is
not. I know that I always get that with diagnostic thinking, because when you explain the process, it seems so simple, but to actually do it is very hard, and especially when you're trying to facilitate it. But I want to go back to something you said was so powerful, right? How many of you out there are feeling the same thing as Madeleine has felt, and even I felt during my own career, which was invisible? Being invisible is a choice, and it has to get to that level of frustration where you feel like, okay, I'm going to step over this great big hurdle that I have. I just don't know how to do it, right? It's one of those huge hurdles that I think that we share in the work that we both do, Madeleine, you and I both do, is helping people to step over that hurdle. And that invisible feeling is centered around fear of being wrong, fear of making a wrong decision, fear of being seen as less.
Yeah, saying something silly.
Yeah, it's
judged.
Yeah. All of that, and it creates in your fear that you so eloquently coined. Probably everybody around the world has some form of it. I would think, so. the biggest challenge that you see, and I heard you talk about the treatment and all of that, so I heard you say a little bit about taking the baby steps. So how do you get people to take the challenge of the baby steps? What's the question they need to be asking themselves?
Well, sometimes the hardest answer, I mean, it's an easy question, but it's quite a hard answer to get to, is what do you want?
Yeah.
What do you want?
Yeah.
So if you are staying invisible and you're staying invisible for a sustained period of time, maybe it's been years, it's serving you, it's serving a purpose, it's something that's working for you.
Yeah.
So what do you want to be different?
Yes.
If you're happy, don't change, don't fix what is not broken. Yeah. But being able to define what you want is absolutely key. And sometimes people find that difficult. When I'm working with private coaching clients, they assume they want what society wants for them. And it takes them a while to realize what they want.
Yes.
And even in corporate situations, when I'm running strategy sessions for business leaders, what's their goal? What do they want? It's actually an easy question and a difficult answer.
Very much so, because behind every want is an emotion. And unless you can really get to the point of really understanding what is the emotion behind the want, right? And then figuring out some of those layers of then how do you ask, right? So it's another piece of, articulating that. So I love that you shared that tip, because I think it's really important. It seems so simple, but it's not, and people are stuck all over the world. What are some of the tools that you use to support, your own leadership?
Lead it, as in leading myself, do you mean, or the programs that I run for leaders?
Yeah, two levels: leading yourself and then leading the program. So thank you for the clarification.
So for myself, and this is also what I teach, all leadership starts with self-leadership.
Yes.
And answering that question, what do I want, is the first step. And so I encourage you, if you're struggling with that answer, if somebody listening to this is struggling with that answer, what I encourage you to do is start what I call, just start following your nose and do what makes you happy. It might be completely unrelated to work. It might be buying that pair of shoes, or buying that handbag, or daydreaming about that beautiful house. Whatever it is, allow yourself to go there and allow that to be your breadcrumb path, because it's leading you to what you want. Why do I want that pair of shoes? Why do I want that pair of shoes? What's the reason I want that? How will it make me feel when I get them? That's leading you to what you want. And so follow your desire, follow your nose. If you want to go and walk in the park, if you want to go and listen to some music, whatever it is, allow yourself to do that, especially us women. We're so busy performing and doing everything that is expected of us and everything we're supposed to do and should do, that we don't give ourselves pleasure. But where your pleasure is, that is where your purpose is. It's there. It's just camouflaged. Wow. So that's the first thing. And it's such a relief when I allow people to do this. And let me tell you that actually many of my clients find that really hard. I worked with one lady, now it's a few years ago, and it was so hard for her. She was a mother, very high performer. It was so hard for her to give herself pleasure that it took us ages to define one tiny little thing that she could do. And do you know what it was? It was when she was making her cup of tea in the morning, she would open the window and look at the plant on her balcony and touch the plant. It was as simple and silly as that. Touch that green plant because it reminded her of her Italian home.
Yes.
And it gave her pleasure. Yes. And that first step, it took her a while just to allow herself to do that every morning. That first step took a second a day. It led her little by little, and her life has transformed now by following her desire and allowing herself to find her purpose.
I love that because many times, in the work, like I said, we do so much of the similar work, but allowing people to define that purpose and their values and the vision, that work on the front end of really allowing yourself the quietness to be able to say, what are the things that I really do enjoy, right? It's unpacking and it's stopping the neuroscience of stress, get things done. We go at speed of light. And if we don't slow those things down, we can't think about things that bring us pleasure, right? We can't really identify the things that drive our purpose. And so it's an important part of being able to stop the world a little bit and say, what does make us happy? And how many of us out there are actually doing that? Probably not many. So it's a great advice. I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
And it needn't take any time, it might just be looking out the window and looking at this autumn now, looking at the falling leaves. It might take a millisecond, but it's doing it consciously.
Yes.
And Dina, you mentioned the neuroscience. So our brains are amazing things. Yeah. And the wonderful thing about our brains is that they start in our head, they go down our spinal cord, our spinal column, and into every single part of our bodies. So we can often feel what's right before we know what's right, because our brains are there. So sometimes it's just what makes you happy. You don't even have to understand why.
Yes.
You can feel it.
Yes.
And you follow that feeling.
Yes.
It leads you to your purpose. Trust it and it leads you there.
I love that. Do a lot of work with, focusing kind of the gut, the heart, and then the head, right? So if you can step back and feel those things, what's your gut saying about this? What does your heart say for that situation, for that other person? Because behind every ask, behind every fear, behind every bad behavior we deal with in the world, there's a really good person behind that situation.
Indeed. Absolutely.
Hold a space for people, hold a space of empty is what we call for people, so that you can, one, find that deep connection, but also find a way that you can ask for what you want and step out of the fear. So just holding that space. So tell us a little bit about what books, blogs, and podcasts that you listen to, by the way.
Okay, so in terms of books, I've been a personal development junkie since, I don't know, I was like 16 or something. I've got all of them. My first one that converted me was Dancing to a Different Drum by Gil Scott Peck. That's the one that really got me to realize that I had something special inside me, and it was necessary to share that. So that's my first one. In terms of blogs, I don't do so much. I have dyslexia, so reading isn't my thing. I love listening and I love watching, but reading isn't my thing. And it's something I wish I was better at, but okay, I've accepted that that's not my thing. So I don't read too much blogs, only books. But podcasts, I love David Neagle, The Successful Mind. So he's been such a help to me. His podcast has been absolutely amazing. And my second favorite is Claude Silver. So she's the Chief Heart Officer of VaynerMedia. And she has a blog where she's talking about compassionate leadership. Yeah. And she has wonderful guests on. And again, that fills me with hope for our future, because I think it is the solution. So those would be my favorite ones.
I love that. Chief Heart Officer. I feel like that when I first met you, Madeleine, there's a shared synergy for heart work. And I think we do a lot of that. So I so appreciate you sharing your, sources. If you could go back and do it all over again, what would you tell Madeleine?
I would tell her what I tell myself now is keep going, keep going. You're on the right path. So much of my younger life, I just didn't know. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know who I wanted to be. I just didn't know. And it's only when you look back that you can see that you were on the right path. So I would tell her, you're on the right path. Keep going. And that's what I would tell everyone that's watching. You're on the right path. If you're listening to this, watching this, it's
Yes.
because you're on the right path. So keep going.
I love that. And I can't say thank you enough for sharing your pearls of wisdom and the work that you do. And your company is called Business for Good. So I wanted to thank you for joining the Confident Women Leaders Show. This is my guest, Dr. Madeleine de Hauke, and I appreciate the work you do, and I certainly love sharing some of our work together. So I appreciate you. Thank you so much, Madeleine, and everyone out there. Stay the course. Goodbye and signing off.
Thank you, Dina. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.